Hello, and welcome to the very first of the Soulforce Music Fireside Chats. My name is Joseph Arnold. I'm a violinist and Alexander Technique teacher.
And I'm Aaron Beagleisen. I am a vocalist, and I'm also an Alexander Technique teacher.
All right, so what we're going to do today, we're going to introduce the idea of Soulforce music. And actually, let's begin by talking about what these videos are for and what it's kind of leading up to and all that kind of a thing. And then we'll get into what is Soulforce music and what is the Soulforce Music School, who's it for, and what are the benefits of it, and how did this all come about. And we'll kind of see where this conversation goes. Sound all right?
Sounds like fun, man.
So these fireside chats, what are we doing here?
Yeah, so I think part of it is that we have this vision, right? And it's to we have, I would say, our core values down, but some of the more slender, finite details aren't really in focus yet. So using this time in part to just winnow those out.
Right, so we're going to be thinking aloud here, intuiting aloud, and hopefully getting some of your feedback on what resonates. So partly it's just for us to think through this project aloud. And also, we want to find people who are interested in this and who maybe want to join the Soulforce Music Club or whatever, the school or whatever it might be. Because there's a real need for this. It's a real need, right? So maybe we'll talk about how each of us came to this and then what the school is.
Yeah, sure. Do you mind if I go first?
Go for it.
All right. So let's see. So I came to this being let's say learning to be an embodied human being. Heart-centered, but not disengaged with the mind, gainfully working towards a better world, and being at ease with myself and healing the deep wounds of myself.
Just that, huh?
Just that stuff. Yeah. Well, only those.
Nothing big.
Yeah. Doesn't everybody do that? No. So I came to this. So I was going through. I was at the Eastman School of Music. And my first semester into school, I started to lose my voice and have a lot of physical pain. And I was also experiencing a lot of anxiety and depression. Some of it was centered around the experience of losing my voice, but as I came to realize, a lot of this was running a lot deeper than that. So for a few years, I was going to speech pathologists and physical therapists, and nothing really seemed to help all that much. So it came to a head the summer after my junior year, and I was really looking for anything that was going to help me. And I found Katie Fittipaldi, my first Alexander Technique teacher, and just this amazing experience of somebody putting their hands on you, and suddenly everything wasn't quite so difficult. So that was the start. So went to Alexander Technique School.
And what is this Alexander Technique of which you speak?
Oh, yes, that's a good question.
Some of our audience, might be musicians, and I certainly talk about Alexander Technique a bunch on this channel, but briefly.
Yeah, so Alexander Technique, I think this is basically a co-opted definition from Joseph Arnold, a very fine Alexander Technique teacher, by the way. Which is that most of the time we're efforting quite a bit when we do whatever it is. Even if we're washing the dishes, our shoulders get all tensed, and we're working really hard in our systems to do whatever it is that we're doing. And Alexander Technique is the study of how do you do the things that you want to do in your life easily. It's the applied study of them. And a big component of it is having a teacher basically show you with their hands, but really showing you with how they are, so that you can be easier on yourself. Yeah, that's what comes up for me. Anything you want
Yeah, it's a whole range of studies, really. From the one lens is just how do you move with less excess muscular tension? How do you use your body more efficiently, more easily? And it connects to all areas of life, really. I came to it because of pain as well. Pain in my arms from playing violin like this. And the funny thing is, I didn't know that I was playing violin like this because it was just totally normal. It totally felt normal. And through being in pain for years in college, I found Alexander technique finally, and I learned how to play like this rather than like this. And then was able to apply that to other areas of life, even just speaking or walking or being at the computer or exercising. And there's a lot more to it, but that's the basic idea. And we'll get into more of that, I'm sure, as we'll go along here.
Odds are pretty good, I think.
Keep going.
So Alexander Technique. So I enrolled in the Alexander Technique School in Philadelphia School of Alexander Technique here in Philly, and I met this fine young man sitting next to me, and pretty early on, a couple things that Joseph had mentioned that were working really well for him was something called like integral theory or integral spirituality, which has really been put together by Ken Wilber, and also going to therapy. So let's not at least 4 thumbs up. If I had more thumbs, I would use more thumbs. So I started going to therapy, and so I started going specifically. I started with doing shadow work, Jungian shadow work. So going to a psychotherapist, and now doing parts work or internal family systems therapy, which is also really excellent. And I also, with this kind of framework that Ken Wilber puts out, I started to really actually have a sense of what are the things that I actually need to be doing to make sense of the world and make sense of my place. So that's about what comes up for me now. Something that's nice is it's easier to do things these days. It's more fun.
Yeah, and I'll say one of the maybe this can be kind of an inroad to what is Soulforce music. You're talking about integral theory, and that. So what is this? It's a framework for understanding all kinds of human growth, development, and healing, from spirituality to science to society to things like therapy and exercise. Like it really takes an incredibly comprehensive viewpoint on what is human well-being and development, and so why are we talking about human development writ large here when here we are, two musicians, two Alexander teachers, and one of the most important insights that we wish to bring to musicianship, and here we are, we're kind of getting to the nub of it here, and about what is Soulforce music. It's taking the point of view that musicianship is not just this one thing confined to a narrow part of your life, and that if you want really deep, beautiful, fun, joyful, expressive, masterful musicianship, really powerful musicianship, then you need to look at things that are connected elsewhere in your life. It's your whole life that matters, because how you're feeling emotionally, what's happening in your body, physically, how much tension, whether or not you get exercise, how healthy your body is, how healthy your mind is, how healthy your emotions are, whether or not that you have some kind of spiritual practice, you're engaging with the larger questions of life, and this is spiritual, not in any kind of religious or dogmatic sense. But like all these kinds of things, like how you take care of yourself, how you grow as a human, these are all intimately connected with your musicianship. And that's kind of where this integral model meets musicianship. It's we take a look at the whole person, the whole human, your whole life, and through this comprehensive framework, try to improve everything, so that your musicianship can become much more powerful. I think that's a basic understanding there. One basic principle of Soulforce music. It's your whole life, whole person.
Yeah, something we've been talking about is I think what comes to mind for me is something that I think is pretty consistent practice for both of us is how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you're not having fun, if you don't believe in the capacity to really be deeply blended with the experience of doing the dishes, that's actually going to have an effect on the quality of the music that you make, because it's deciding that making that delineation between an activity as opposed to a way of being. An activity to bring you joy as opposed to a way of ease and a way of beauty that you are within yourself.
Right. So it's what we're taking a look at is not so much the activity itself, this is true of Alexander techniques for sure, and the overall approach of Soulforce Music School will be we're taking a look at not just the act of making music or playing dishes, but how you do that. And so, like, what is your overall attitude towards the activity? What's happening in your body towards the activity? What's happening in your mind? What are your habits around doing something that might be difficult? And oftentimes, people get tight around doing difficult things. And so then you bring that with you wherever you go in your whole life. You might notice that you get tense in lots of different situations. And so you might be bringing those same habits of tension, those same sort of stressful ways of being, you could say, to whatever it is that you do. So it really behooves you then to look at not just like what's happening in one body part if you're in pain, or just what's happening in this one activity if that's what's most stressful or painful for you, but really like what's your frame of mind generally? What are your go-to emotional places and bodily habits? And and then that's like one place you can look that improves lots of other things. Automatically.
Beautifully put.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I want to talk about we've been talking for several minutes here, and let's get down to what is Soulforce music.
Well, but first, Joseph, the people want to know. They want to know who are you?
Well, yeah. Okay. So maybe that'll be the way in. I am a violinist and Alexander technique teacher. I went to violin conservatory, at Carnegie Mellon, and it was there that I had pain in my arms from playing, and I saw dozens of doctors and physical therapists, and you name it, I did it. And I was still in pain for a long time, and I nearly dropped out of the classical program. I switched majors. Ended up getting a degree in jazz, but in any case, I couldn't really participate much anymore, and so I finally took this class on Alexander technique, and that really changed my whole life. It really changed my whole life. I didn't realize how much attention I brought to everything, and it gave me practical tools, things I could do to be less tense, because boy, I was tense. And then came to the Philadelphia School for the Alexander Technique, a teacher training program, which is where we met. And it's really been a guiding light in my life, a central study, like learning how to be more and more easeful, more and more spacious. And so Alexander Technique, it really freed me of my pain. I don't have pain chronic pain anymore, and it's been years. So I've been a professional musician, playing a lot and not being in pain. And it's also been kind of a doorway into the mysteries of life as well, which is one of my favorite subjects. And so it's been really, really fascinating embodied study of well-being. And so then, more recently, getting into what is this Soulforce music idea? With the shutdown back in March, all those years ago, it seems like, with COVID, I think we were all facing what is this new world that we're in? And one of my first reactions was, I don't want to go back to the way things were. I don't want to go back to the rat race, running around. I wanted to live in a new way. And I didn't know what that was. I was listening to a lot of podcasts kind of talking about this. One of them in particular was the Future Thinkers podcast with the mountaineer, philosopher, flow
all-around badass.
Flow expert Jamie Wheel. And maybe I'll put that in the show notes, that episode. He talks about, the show hosts ask him, Jamie, the world seems to be falling apart. Do humans have any hope for surviving all of this? And he said, to my view, it's either Soulforce or bust. What is Soulforce? Soulforce, I think, was coined by Mahatma Gandhi for the quality in a person that inspires, the quality that of deep truth in their message, of beauty and goodness. So Mahatma Gandhi certainly had this himself, where when he spoke, people listened because he was speaking deep truth from the core of his being. And of course he was able to inspire a whole nation, basically, for the civil rights movement in India. And Martin Luther King, holy moly, Soulforce. Again, when he spoke, there was this really stirring experience, and other civil rights leaders, but also artists, of course. We've all gone to concerts, hopefully, where you're just left afterwards, just totally touched, moved, blown away. And it can even be just a very simple performance of something. Who knows what? There are lots of examples, but so when he said that, it's either Soulforce or bust, and I'm thinking what do I want to do with my life now in this new world, and where can I apply my talents to helping make a better world? And I've been teaching Alexander technique and really loving that, and playing music, and my Alexander teaching has been going more and more towards kind of a similar thing as what he was talking about with Soulforce, playing from the heart, how to really play from the heart. What does it really mean to give expressive performances that aren't like effortful performances, like effortless expression, and very touching, soul-stirring kind of expression. And so it all kind of came together in that moment. I can remember pretty clearly. Soulforce music. Wow. What if that was a thing? What if musicians could be, part of the solution here, spreading Soulforce? What if that could be taught? Not just for luminaries like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King, or musicians like Aretha Franklin. There's so many examples of really tremendous performers, people who really made a difference in the world. So it might not be just those greats that have this. What if those regular people, regular musicians, gigging musicians, could also spread Soulforce, be sources of inspiration and enlivenment. That's sort of the vision. I'll just say one quote here that connects to all of that. I can't remember the author of this quote, but the quote goes something like, "Don't ask what the world needs. Rather ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs are people who have come alive." And that's really the framework for understanding what we're talking about here. That you, as a musician, can come alive more, and we have developed, many sort of self-care, sort of contemplative practices for musicians, integral practices of taking a look at your whole life, so that you do come alive more, like, as a person, and that will definitely come through in your music. And then a big part of it is showing exactly how to do that while you're playing music, and also in other parts of your life. I just said a bunch of words there. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me, but I'm a relatively biased audience.
Right. Yeah, so we're housemates as well, which is why we're sitting in the same room without masks on. We talk about this a lot. That's the story of myself and the Soulforce Music School, or at least the Soulforce music idea. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add? What comes up for you?
Let's see. Well, one thing is, probably over the course of these videos, you'll probably see Joseph and I do something like close our eyes and pause for a few seconds. And so this is actually something we've pretty much integrated into our day-to-day conversations in life. And so for me, I guess I would call this practice deep listening. Typically, somebody speaks to you, and that's a high stimulus prompt, right? There are all sorts of parts inside of you that are working hard to try to make sure you don't look silly, or want to look silly, or whatever it is, or want to look tough, or something like that, right? But all of those places for me don't quite necessarily feel like I don't know. They don't feel like deep. They don't feel deeply true. So this practice of just listening, just taking 10 seconds or 5 seconds or 2 seconds and just really listening. Something about that, I don't know if you notice it in the video, but my whole self just kind of comes into a state of ease. And so this is kind of one of the central premises is, how can you come from a really high stimulus activity,
like playing music. Can you explain stimulus? What does that mean? High stimulus, low stimulus.
Right. So something like wiggling your finger is not something that, for me anyway, I don't have to work very hard at thinking about doing this. I can just kind of do it, and I don't necessarily hunch my shoulders or be like, okay, come on, finger. That's not my practice anyway.
So that's a low stimulus activity.
Low stimulus activity. And a high stimulus activity is something like playing music, or playing soccer, or basically things that are difficult, or something like lifting a washer, like a washer or dryer unit or something. Like it's something where it's either the complexity is really intense, or just the physical demand is really intense, or both, which is kind of where music is. Right, and also doing things in a high-pressure situation. Right, that's right.
Like performing.
Right, that's right. Yeah, so performance really is a pretty unique animal in that it really has, it's a social societal pressure, right? There's either perceived or real expectations from the people that are watching you. There's also the physical demand, even just something like even just like standing for an hour and a half or 2 hours if you're giving a recital. That's no mean feat. But add to that the act of basically like, you're doing the equivalent of like poetic acrobatics, and also it's an intensely mentally stimulating activity. You have to remember all this music as you play it. So it's a really high stimulus activity. So the idea is, so this simple practice is one of the many things that we've kind of integrated. That it's like, okay, what in 10 seconds can I do to make sure that my music is far more beautiful?
Yeah.
In terms of the school, maybe we can talk a little bit more about so this all sounds really good, Joseph. but how do you do that? How does one go about becoming an ensouled musician to activate Soulforce? How does one do that?
Goodness. Well, actually, I just wanted to close the loop on what you were talking about before with that taking the pause practice. Just to say this is one thing that you can do.
That's right.
To help yourself in all kinds of situations. I like to say that sometimes the thing that's most needed is a little bit of nothing. And if you learn how to take what I call a pause with awareness, or this deep listening pause, essentially the same thing, you can lower the demand on your system, the emotional, body, mental, so that it's easier to approach whatever it is that you're doing. It's the difference between swimming in water and drowning in water. To be overwhelmed with the activity at hand, this is why you get tense when you're doing something, even if it doesn't feel overwhelming necessarily. There's some party that's getting stressed slightly as you're doing something, which is why you might be getting tight while playing music. And so something like this pause, this is one of the fundamental skills in the Alexander technique, learning how to take a pause at the right time, the right kind of pause, to let go, to come into contact with what's actually happening for yourself, rather than just rushing into something, etc. So and then to come to your question here about how does somebody do this? Well, how does somebody become a more ensouled musician? Maybe I'll talk about some of the different layers of Alexander technique, because it is very much about the Alexander technique insofar as it's learning how to get out of the way of yourself. So maybe it's two things, learning how to get out of the way of yourself and knowing the right, how to what to pay attention to in the moment. What's the right intention around music? I'd say it is those two things. So Alexander technique has lots of different layers to it. One of the more superficial layers is about posture. So if somebody's sitting more upright or they're more slumped, that makes a difference on how you feel and how you function. Right? And so there are lots of ideas about posture, sit up straight. And those ideas sometimes aren't so effective. Because if I do this, then I'm really tense all the time. And that's not going to feel good either. So Alexander technique provides more nuance. Well, sitting up straight, the straight part isn't actually the important part. The ease part is. So to be able to relax up. You could try that right now. Just relax up. Instead of relaxing down, which is the normal way of thinking of it, we relax up. So this is introducing the idea of ease. Right? So it's quality of movement. Taking a look at quality of movement really matters. Whether or not you're tense or free while you're doing something really matters for your quality of sound. If you're tight, it's going to dampen the sound. All your techniques are going to be strained. You can hear that. And so even if you do everything else right, so to speak, if you're tight in your body, that's going to affect how you function, how your performance goes, your quality of sound, and how you feel as well. And so how you use your body then is deeply important for how you make music. Another phrase of mine is your body is your instrument. Of course, it's literally true for you. But even for violin, violin doesn't play itself. And so every aspect of doing something with the violin involves body movements. And the quality of those body movements is the quality of your performance. And so I was working through this through years, like learning about quality of movement, and then realizing that there's something about like the quality of mind as well. Like if I have a really narrow attention or broad attention, wow, that makes a really big difference on my quality of movement. And also on my sound. I even do this with my violin students sometimes, having them expand their sense of space while they play. You can hear it in their sound. It makes a difference. And so there's all these ways of becoming more free in your body, and a lot of it, some of it is also related to emotional well-being.
Yeah.
And that's a whole big subject we'll get into sometime. So piece number 1, getting out of the way of yourself. Learning how to let go of all kinds of tension, even in the midst of doing difficult things, like playing a concerto or something like that. And the amazing thing about that is that you'll sound better, like way better. It's going to feel so much easier. It feels so much easier. One of my students years ago put it, like when she was singing, as one of my Alexander students, when she was singing these pieces before, they felt like really big and difficult. And after a couple months of Alexander training, she said those same pieces felt like little toys that she could play around with.
Nice.
The amount of effort, like excess effort, was so diminished. And no, it's not just that there's less effort; it's that her performances became much more powerful. And this is really stunning to see. Like again and again in Alexander classes at the school where we attended, or in other situations, like all of a sudden there'd be this sort of luminous quality to the performances.
Yeah.
And these people weren't trying to be more expressive. And what trying to be more expressive often sounds like is just getting tighter while you're doing something. Like, the funny faces that people make while trying to be expressive just gets in the way of the expression itself.
That's right.
And so there's this so important to be able to get out of the way of yourself, to let go of the excess tension. That paves the way for this. And the other central piece is learning how to play from the heart, what that actually means. Because what music is not just a doing of a series of techniques that bring about a series of sounds. That is not music. Music is not merely a series of sounds. And you can hear when somebody's playing a series of sounds. You can hear it, right? You can hear it in the performance. They're trying to get the notes right. You know what that sounds like. It doesn't sound that great. It's not all that engaging. So what's really needed is to be able to connect what's happening for you, your own emotions, while you play. Paying attention to your own emotional response while you play. It links in the great depth. Like emotions have been evolving for a really long time, hundreds of millions of years. And we don't need to try to be expressive to tap into, actually that doesn't allow us to tap into our real expressiveness.
Right.
To have some sort of preconceived notion. It's just like bad acting. I am an actor. And the reason that sounds bad is because it's contrived.
Yeah.
Whereas there's this thing that we can tap into, hundreds of millions of years of emotional evolution. It's in your body. And all you have to do is just pay attention to your own emotional responses to the sounds that you're making, that links in, that loops in all this incredible depth that we have available to us. And it feels very simple, feels very free, and the amazing thing about it is it's going to make you sound so much better. You're going to sound so much better. You're going to feel better about your musicianship. Your body's actually going to get a lot freer, because when you're trying to get the notes right, that's one of the biggest stimuli for getting tense. Because it's really hard to get all those notes right. And I'm not saying don't get the notes right. got to get the notes right, or else it's not the song. But rather, the larger thing to pay attention to is this depth of expression that's inside, playing from the heart. And when you play from the heart, your body will get freer. The techniques will get freer. It'll be easier to navigate through the piece, to remember the piece while you're playing. It'll be easier to be connected to the other musicians. It'll be easier to be connected to your audience. And your audience will pick up on this difference. This is one of the amazing hidden things that musicians can do. Like, your sound transmits your quality of being.
Good quote, Joseph.
Right? Just like somebody walks in the room and you immediately have like a ugh or it's that with sound through your instrument. And so one of the basic tenets, the core tenets of Soulforce music is the understanding that your quality of being is transmitted to the audience through your sound. So if you're in touch with your effortless expression, that your own emotional state while you're playing, then that's going to come through in your sound. And if you I'll put it this way: if you allow yourself to be touched by your music, your audience is much more likely to be touched by your music. If you're thinking about getting the notes right, that's what your audience is going to hear.
Yeah.
So there's no real easy answer here. Like, what is Soulforce music, and how do you do all this?
Yeah.
But it takes some explaining.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think something that's came up for me is that this is not, at least this is not. It's not just an idea. So this is not just something that Joseph and I are like, wouldn't it be nice if we felt like this? That this is like years of undoing and undoing.
Yeah.
And part of it is that this is actually it's the most difficult part is simply I don't know about them. One of the difficult things is that you just have to believe that you can actually do this. Right? That's really hard. To actually believe that you can just be, like, if you've been suffering through pain, anxiety, or whatever for years and years, you've really been pushing yourself, and somebody says, if you just really listen deeply to yourself, like, that's what we're all asking for, and it'll actually make you feel easier. It would be so easy to just be like,
Yeah, but I'm not doing it.
Is that? And I've definitely had that thought like 100 times as I'm practicing. It's like, but I'm not working hard enough, right?
Right.
But so part of it is that you actually have to just believe that you can do things easily, that you can do things beautifully, that those two things actually are part of the same process, and that what we want to see what I want to see when I'm in an audience, as an audience member, I want to see you. I really care a little bit about what you're playing. I care a little bit. I'm a musician, and I like certain things and I don't like certain things, but really I want to see you. And that's what the practice is. And again, that's actually something that there are practical tools that you can use. There are practical frameworks that aren't that difficult to synthesize, that you can actually embody. Joseph was talking about this one of these simple activities. It's like, try really hard to do something and see what the sound sounds like. Play it up a little bit, have a little fun, and see. I'm gonna try really hard to sing up. It's like, well, that sounds not that great. And letting that go, I can feel specifically in my voice, and you can probably hear it on the track, that I just got a hell of a lot easier just by saying, I'm not going to try so hard. So this is actually something what's something I think that's so beautiful about something like Soulforce music is that it's integrating, I think, what people have a sense of as the lofty or the spiritual over here, which is these beautiful ideas of ways that we can be, with what's the actual practical ways that you can become an easier embodied, happier, more enriched, more nurtured, expressive human being when you're playing, and when you're not playing as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So like that. This is actually, it's practical. It's practical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's practical.
Yeah, and it's based in, like you were saying, years of our own personal work. Like, going from really dark places,
Yeah.
like chronic pain,
Yeah.
depression, anxiety, performance anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, we worked through that, and are still in the process of working through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not shying away from doing that really hard work. And so we're then sharing all the tools, the things that we found most helpful,
Yeah.
and are continuing to explore and deepen in ourselves.
Mm.
So you're getting the benefit then of all of our years, combined years of training in this, to, again, be more easeful in your body. And so you feel better and you function better. And then to give performances that feel better and sound better. And then also, like that, to go like a step further, which is why this is Soulforce music, which is like really coming alive in yourself as a person, and on stage as well in your music making, because that's what the world needs. The world needs us to be alive.
Yeah.
The world needs us. The world needs you to come alive in yourself. Because nothing else is really going to help the chaos and strife and suffering that's in the world. Working harder in like a narrow way, like putting more effort in, that's not going to cut it anymore. Like in music training, that's what leads to pain and struggle and burnout, and also just in the world. Like you as a person, the regular person doing daily things. Like, do you really want to add more effort to your life? You know, like, is that really going to help the world? Is that really going to help yourself? Now, all these things are connected, and I mean that can sound kind of woo-woo, but it's true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, you come alive in yourself. Come alive in yourself. Damn it. And you're going to feel better, and your music's going to come alive more, and you're going to be a more positive presence in the world, which is like sort of the whole scope and vision of the Soulforce music. Is all these things are connected.
Yeah. I'd say, again, like, if you don't believe us, try it.
Yeah.
Start with the music. Take your instrument and try to do the thing really, really hard, and you might get the notes right, but listen for the quality of the quality of music that you recorded and listen back, and the odds are, so then you might take you might take a take where you take 10 seconds. You actually breathe deeply. That's the adventurous house pup, Sheba. Sheba is very good at being an expressive dog. She knows how to use her body as an instrument.
Barks with her whole body.
That's right. And so she's committed. She's engaged and enlivened in the world. So, and then take 10 seconds and come back to yourself. And
just like that.
And then maybe set a different intention, like that. I want this piece to be this little excerpt to be beautiful and fun.
Yeah,
something like that. Beautiful, expressive, and fun.
Right.
And see what changes. And there you go. There's your evidence. Then it translates to washing the dishes. Do you want to work really hard at washing the dishes? Or do you want the washing the dishes to be a beautiful, expressive, playful experience? And it's possible. And again, there's a part of me that's like, yes, stupid, I don't want to. It's like, you know, because I don't want to believe. Part of me doesn't want to believe that even washing the dishes, even moving bags of leaves outside in the rain, could be a beautiful, moving experience, and part of my musical practice, actually. And my music, part of my musical practice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that kind of seems like enough for today.
Yeah.
good place to end on.
Yeah.
So if you made it this far, thank you very much for listening. We're going to have more of these conversations. We'll release them every week. Just on, some of these conversations will just be on the principles of Soulforce music or Alexander technique. Some of them will have guided experiences for you, and some will be about the school itself. We're starting school, Soulforce Music School. It'll be initially online, offering online trainings to learn how to do this, so that you can really transform yourself, your life, and your musicianship to something that's really powerful, fun, inspiring, purposeful. Yeah. So there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels great.
All right. Very good, Aaron. See you
It's
next time.
High five.